Eric, we've caught up in-house here at Nutrient Ag Solutions Innovation Farm, just outside of Champaign. Quite the facility that Nutrient has here. I understand this is kind of your home base of operations when you're not at home.
Yeah, and you and I are talking on the phone, right? And I'm in some other state, or you're in some other state, and it's nice to be face to face. But yeah, this is our new innovation farm. We just did a kind of a celebration ribbon cutting as well here, just to kind of get this place going. It's a lot of fun, a lot of great people here, and we're pretty excited what we're going to do.
A lot of things happening here, a lot of things happening in the weather. If you've been across the Midwest here over the last week, you've seen anything from 80 degrees to snow and ice and a lot of wind and dust and everything in between.
Yeah, I'm waiting on what we haven't seen yet, right? So I guess we could a hurricane and then we just complete the bingo card. But it's been a very it's been a pretty rough spring. I mean, so since Commodity Classic, right, we've had 3 major winter storms across the country, and each one of them has done the same thing. We've ripped off dust storms from Texas. Some of that dust, like last weekend, made it all the way to Ontario. We had this just the other day. I mean, the rain that came through Illinois, everybody's car is filthy because of all the dust out of the out of the south. And what's interesting about this is that I stepped back, and I got in the office the other day. This is the story. I got in the office, set my stuff down. Matt Reardon, my colleague, we just stepped back and we said, let's not look at anything, but just sense what's going on in the weather. Like if you walk outside and there's a 45-mile-an-hour south wind and it's dusty, like how often have we seen that in Illinois? Now, we get windy here, but Texas dust transported over us 3 times already so far this spring. That there's a feeling to it. You have to just step back and go, okay, something is way out of whack. And so it's got a lot of us with our ears perked up, just worried about where there is drought and where drought's going to go. And before we get to it, are we dealing with too much? These past few systems have really ripped through the country. Severe weather everywhere. I mean, we had 9 tornado reports in Illinois last night. I think they're going to whittle that down, but a ton of severe weather. We had some hail. And it's just the beginning of March. In fact, today, when we're talking first day of spring, we still have months to go with this chaos. And in the meanwhile, we're trying to figure out if they're going to plant 95 million acres of corn and if they're going to get it in on time, right? So all of these things are in the background, and it's going to be a challenging spring.
With that weather out of whack, you and I were talking a little bit earlier, and you kind of correlated that to other years that we've seen some issues across the Midwestern growing regions in the summer. Yeah,
so we can always throw out the big dog years. Like I can say 2011 and 2012. And are there any similarities? Well, don't read not you, but anybody listening, don't read anything more into this than this statement. Did 2012 had a fading La Nina? Yeah, it had a fading La Nina. So does 2025. Okay. Did 2012 in the preceding winter and preceding year have drought in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, and then New Mexico and Mexico? Yeah. Do we have that now? We do. Is there actually more drought on the drought monitor going into 2025 than there was in 2012? There actually is. In fact, there's double what we had last spring. So we look at all of those things and can find some similarities, but there is just no such thing as a perfect analog. And March of 2012 was also the record warmest for like 14 states. Now, we've been warm, but we've not been that warm. Mm-hmm. What we have to worry about is if we're going to have a problem with summer drought like 12 did, the big thing that has to happen is between now and June, the atmosphere has to lose everything. It's got to be going super slow across the Pacific Ocean so that it builds up in these big domes of high pressure that sit over the Midwest and cause major long-term drought. We are in Illinois much more vulnerable to flash drought scenarios, 2 to 3 weeks where we miss out. 12 was a season, almost a year-long drought scenario in some places. And so we're asking these questions. Is there any sort of similarity? And I say, yeah, you can find those. But remember, we have a long way to go to get through. And don't forget this, in 2012, nearly every farmer I know that farmed through that loved 2012 until about June 15th. Mm-hmm. That was a great start to the season. So it's just something to think about. It's a year that's floating around in my head, but it's also raw. And what I mean by that is it's raw for 2 reasons. One, I lived through it. It was tough. My wife was pregnant. We had a kid at 106 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll never forget that summer. But the other raw part of it is what we just experienced this last week. I mean, Texas dust, it just floats around in your head and makes you wonder if we're in for something that's just way off kilter.
Well, and you've been kind of talking about that through the winter meeting season. You and I have had a couple of different conversations that there's some indicators out there, and it's still watching those, I would assume.
Yeah, and the indicators are simple. Right now, they add up to a 6 in 10 chance. A 6 in 10 chance that the Corn Belt develops drought. But where is that drought? We think it's west of the Mississippi. I think it's the western Corn Belt that gets it first. I think if you're in the Eastern Corn Belt, so east of the Mississippi, we are likely going to be seeing, I think we might even see tight windows this spring. In other words, we don't blow the doors open for 2 weeks and plant the entire crop. Instead, we're doing it patchwork wise when these little 3 to 4 day windows open. Now, everybody that's listening to us knows that. That's how Illinois is. I mean, we always have to find these tighter, space in these tighter windows. But I think we're going to divide the country on that river this year. And I think we just need to be watching to our west to see if drought creeps in. Now, there's 100 things that can upset that. And I'll tell you the probability again. It's a 60% chance, a 6 in 10. That also means that there's a 4 in 10 chance that the whole system breaks down and the heat goes out to the western United States, and now we're living in plenty of rain and cooler weather. But all of those things have to take shape in late May through June, which means that's still months out. I can't give you a skillful prediction of that just yet, which is why we're going to watch all of these key indicators, the most important of which is the ocean temperatures in the Gulf of Alaska. Watch it carefully. If late May and June those waters go cold, our risk factor for drought goes up. And that's it. That's the simplest I can make it for the western United States versus the central United States. Watch the Gulf of Alaska.
Keep an eye on that. Something you said in there triggered something in previous conversations we had, maybe even years ago, that you've kind of looked at the springs and that those short windows and the number of actual planting days that we've had over the years is actually decreasing. Am I on to something that we've talked about in the past?
No, you're definitely on to it. It has nothing to do with temperatures, honestly. It has everything to do with rainfall frequencies. So what we did observe when you look back, I did the study from 1981 to present when we first talked, and I kept doing it. I've continued all that. We've lost about 5 workable field days in Illinois. Now, that's over 2 months. That's all of April and May. But 5 workable field days is huge when you're talking to a grower who would like to see those all clumped together to get some work done. But that increased frequency of spring rainfall has done that to us overall. So yes, Illinois, April to October, that's our whole growing season. We're wetter by about 3.5 inches on the whole. But a lot of that seems to be concentrated in spring. So that's where we've lost those days.
Interesting. I thought, the conversation jogged a memory there. So I'm glad we were able to bring that back up. Last time you and I talked, we were talking a little bit about South America and Brazil and potentially seeing some issues there with some of their growing areas in the safrinha crop. What are you seeing there?
I've got about 15% of the safrinha acres under the gun. And what I'm talking about is the eastern growing area, so not Mato Grosso. But if you're over in like Goiás, Tocantins, Minas Gerais, and Bahia, they do grow safrinha crop, but it's about 15%. They have been record dry. Now, it's going to try to rain there next week. If that rain fails, that is a telltale sign that the atmosphere is doing its typical thing, which is drought begets drought. But if the models are right and it rains there late next week, then that is going to start to end some of this major stress. And I do mean major stress. We've been keeping NDVI data from some of our high-resolution satellites going back to the year 2000. And right now, the NDVI values over eastern Brazil are the lowest we've ever observed. So that crop is not looking healthy from space right now. This rain's coming could help, but is it going to be enough and on enough acres to peel back from what could be a very large safrinha crop? Now, here's the reality. If it is, if in April we go drier in eastern Brazil or southern Brazil, because it's very hard to make a yield problem in the center west. But if we go dry in southern Brazil or go dry in eastern Brazil, we'll be getting the information on what that did to the size of the crop in, May, in June, right about the time we have our typical spring rallies that can, that are based off of intended acres or planted acres or early season rainfall or what us meteorologists are crying about for July, And so sometimes that news compounds and the weather takes over the markets and all of a sudden it's a weather market. There's a premium in there. I think this is one of those years where we might see that, but that's a lot of ifs to come together to make that happen.
Any other global situations, things that you're keeping an eye on right now?
Yeah, so La Nina is fading hard, and that's important because 6 in 10 times when La Nina fades like it's doing now, we tended to be a bit drier from Texas up to Wisconsin. That strip, okay, tended to be on the drier side of average. The other thing is it's got some new long-range model runs in the last couple of weeks, and the newest, which just came out the other day, is trying to pin down 2 very dry areas in the Northern Hemisphere. One is the Western Corn Belt, and then the other one is Ukraine. And you realize if we hit those 2 areas with drought at the same time, if it happens, right? If the model's right, which that's asking a lot, but if the model's right and we hit those 2 areas with drought, boy, that could be massive weather premium in the markets type news. I don't see a major problem with the Indian monsoon right now, and I don't see a problem with China's rainfall. Right now, they're expected to have near normal rains throughout this growing season. So internationally, keep an eye on the Black Sea about the same time you're watching Iowa. I think that's what we need to be thinking about.
Very good. So keep an eye out there. Lots of places to follow along with you. If folks want to do that, how do they do that?
Yeah, easiest way is to head on over to our website, agweather.com, ag-wx.com. You can see all my maps, commentary. That's a great place to go. It's free. Nutrien pays for it, and it's just a fantastic resource.
Can't beat that. So jump on there, find out more. Eric, always good to catch up with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.